Hey world, there's the Demon Lord. Hey world, it is Isaac the Demon Lord, and yet again another YouTube video. So for this one, we are continuing the paganism series. These next few videos I'll be making will be focused on one type of paganism, and specifically targeting that and explaining what it's about and all of that. And so, for this one, we will start with the home base, and those related with the home base, because we'll be doing it in clusters. And so, for this one, we will be discussing what is Germanic paganism. And so, let's start with that. That is a can of worms, or whatever the phrase is. It's a very loaded term. So, because when you say Germanic paganism, it could be referring to two things. We'll start with the cluster sense of the overarching thing, and that is that Germanic paganism just refers to the mythologies of all of the general Northern Europe area. So the large one, which I'll discuss the most, is Norse paganism or Norse heathenry, but also it would include Anglo-Saxon paganism or Anglo-Saxon heathenry, as well as Germanic paganism or Germanic heathenry, which can also, as said, it's an overarching term, but it can also specifically refer to the mythologies, beliefs, and practices specific to the Germany, Austria, Netherlands, all that area of Europe. And so, yeah, as a term, that's what it in general will relate to. Sorry, word slipped my mind. But yes, that is essentially what it refers to. And so we'll move into the next thing, which will be discussing, okay, what's the mythology? What are the gods and such? And so, and we could talk about this more in depth with another video that will come out, but usually when people think of mythologies and pantheons from a Christian or from another lens where you're outside of paganism, you kind of think, okay, it's kind of like a similar situation as, for example, with the Greeks and the Romans, where the Greeks created it and the Romans borrowed it and just changed things up. This isn't the case here. All the Germanic tribes, and that's just a blanket term referring to the Germanic peoples in the Germany area, and in Sweden and Denmark and Norway and even in England, they're all referred to as the Germanic tribes. They would have basically been following the same thing from the start. There's just going to be minute differences of adding a different thing, or adding a different story, or having a different twist on the story, or something like this. But for the most part, they are the same. Now, I will make a caveat when you do get into looking into these sort of things. One thing is, you will find overwhelmingly more information about the Norse world than you will about the Germanic or the Anglo-Saxon world. A lot more stuff was preserved, and so, and you can, a large part of this, you can say, is a result of the Anglo-Saxon and the Germanic lands being Christianized before Scandinavia ever was, because they accepted Christianity a lot sooner because of their proximity to Rome and all that. A lot of the artifacts, writings, or stuff like that we would have had was destroyed, and so it's harder to find the Germanic and the Anglo-Saxon equivalents, but we do know that they would have had the same, or at least very eerily similar beliefs, gods, and all of that. But anyways, because then I'm going to pull up my phone. I know, personally for myself, obviously, know a good chunk of the names of Norse gods, but I don't know the Germanic or the Anglo-Saxon sort of equivalents, and so I got Wikipedia up to help us with that. But essentially, when we're thinking Germanic paganism, especially when people think of Norse paganism, just think Thor, Loki, Odin, these sort of gods. This is what we're talking about. And so going with that, I'll go through the list. They have gods and goddesses. We'll start with the gods, move into the goddesses, just so you can get an idea that it's very similar name-wise. So the first one they mention, Wikipedia, that has a different version. Most of these, if you go onto the Wikipedia page I'm on, it's mostly going to be the Old Norse, because that's where we get most of this information from. But Baldur is the Old Norse name of one god, and the Old English version is Beredeg. Another one with different ones. We have in Old Norse, Freyr. In Old English was referred to as Freya. In Old Norse, another one, Yngvi. In Old English, it's just referred to as Ing. Another one with Old Norse, one was referred to as Hermodr, which in Old English was Hermod. Let's see. Next one it gives is the King of the Gods, which we call Odin in modern English, but in the Germanic area in general, it says for the North Germanic, which is just another way of saying the Norse, they call them Odin. For the West Germanic, which refers mainly to the Germany area, they call them Woden, and that's the name it gives for us, which I guess that would mean English too, would refer to him as that. Now, just to show that it's not all just stuff from the Old Norse, they do give an example, one that is from the Anglo-Saxons, one that they only believed in, called Saxnot. So that's pretty interesting. Next one it mentions is everyone's favorite Thor, which in the Old Norse would have been Thor. And it says for Old English it was Thunor. For Old Saxon, which I think is just referring to before the English were the English, they call them Thunir. And it says for southern Germanic areas, they refer to Thor as Donar. So we see the similarities there, name-wise. Next god it mentions is in Old Norse, Tyr. And it says for Old English, you could either call him Q or Tig. And then it says for Old High German, you could call him Tsiu. So, still fairly similar name-wise. And then it moves, the next one we get anything from is the goddesses. So let's move it there. A lot of ones that are only in Old Norse. Old Norse. I have an example of something that I guess is only Old English. Hretha. That would be interesting to learn more of. Old Norse. One that's apparently only Old High German. I'm gonna guess Synthgunt. That's interesting. Okay, now they finally have an example with two ones. It's really way down there. But an Old Norse, Sol, and an Old High German, Sunna. And there's no other with the goddesses any mention of crossover like that. But I think you get the idea, even with how few they had, that it's all the same stuff. They all had the same sort of gods, and so naturally the stories would have been more or less the same as well. But yeah. So we've discussed the gods. One thing I do want to move into though is there are two sets of gods. One set is the Aesir. Large examples of Aesir, which are just your classics: Odin, Thor, Loki, people like this. And then there's another set called the Vanir. The biggest example, from my memory at least, because you hear Aesir all the time. The biggest example I can think of is, I'm pretty sure Freya is from the Vanir. She's a goddess of war and love. But there's that. And no other examples are coming in my head, but just know that there's two sets, but essentially the lore is they fought, and then eventually they came to terms with each other and now are working with each other. Now, one interesting thing to mention with that though is that there are people that only follow one or the other. Those that follow only the Aesir set of gods are called Asatruists, and those that follow only the Vanir gods are Vanatruists. They're far and few between, but some do pick sides. But a majority will just, because of the lore, will follow them all. But yeah, let's see what else. Now that we got the gods out of the way, I guess we could go into where do we get our information from, which I've done a lot on this channel, but we'll go into it. First and foremost, let's say this: unlike Christianity and those sort of religions where they have scriptures, we have what we call sources. These are writings that are about the mythology as well as the Viking world, at least for the Norse paganism. I'm not too sure what extra stuff they would have for Anglo-Saxon paganism or for Germanic paganism, but because the stories are so eerily similar, we'll just start from this point. The first thing is that someone will pick up a version of the Poetic Edda. I happen to have the Oxford Press version, and this is the first thing you'll get. Usually, that's not what I started with, but that's what you'll usually start with. The second thing you'll end up getting is the Prose Edda, which, again, I have the Penguin Classics version of this. This is also referred to as the Snorri Sturluson Edda, because he's the main writer of this one. Any addition you have is just a translation version of it. But yeah, and the difference is this is more like poems, This is more like full sets of text with some poems here and there. And yeah, the last thing that people get, and this is just more for history purposes, but the sagas of the Icelanders. I happen to have the Penguin Classics edition of this, but that is the last thing, at least for Norse pagans, that you'll get. And that just really more so goes into the Vikings, how they lived, how kings lived and died, you know, the history stuff, where they traveled, what they conquered, what they discovered, and all that jazz. But yeah, so I guess the next thing we can do though is then move into more so practices. As I discussed with the original paganism video, we're all far and few between. No two heathens are going to, or pagans are going to be exactly alike. But the main thing with Norse paganism, at least, the beliefs and practices might differ when you get into the Anglo-Saxon and the Germanic versions. But the first thing you can do to spot one of us, though, is kind of like how Catholics and some other denominations, Christianity, like to wear the cross. We will be wearing this. This is Mjolnir, or Thor's hammer. It's kind of viewed as a source of power and strength and stuff like that, but also just says, hey, I'm a Norse heathen. Another thing, just as a sign that between us and the gods, that we follow them, but also it just shows, hey, I'm a Norse heathen, is you might wear a arm ring. Now, as I discussed with this one kind of fits more like a bracelet. Traditionally, at least from my understanding, it would have been, most arm rings would have actually like fit around your arm, or at least that's what I currently understand of it. I could be wrong. There's that. Another thing I showed in the other video, but with Norse heathens, a lot of us like to get tattoos of the various symbols that do exist. Currently, as I showed another one, I got the Odin's triple horn, which is a sign of an oath to follow, on my chest. And I have the Vegvisir, which, though it didn't exist during their time, can modernly be understood as a symbol of finding my way through life. And I do plan on getting more tattoos and stuff. The Volknut, the Trollknut, I think it's called, the Troll Knot, some rune stuff, and some Norse knotwork, and stuff like that. And yeah, trying to think what else to say. I guess there's that I can go into. So, if you're more chill like me, you don't really do much besides believe in the gods, read your stuff, and learn from the wisdom, and just try to do the best you can at everything you do in life. Try to live an honest life. Try to always improve yourself, and stuff like that. Some people get more serious about it. You can set up an altar at home, and pray at home when you need to. Some people, though, will go into the forest and they will pray, usually with Norse prayer. You find some sort of sacrifice. Modernly, people arrange fruits, breads, food. Alcohol is a big one. give up alcohol and set it on the altar or on the ground or something, and they'll just offer up some sort of prayer. Usually, because it's not like Christianity where you pray every day and ask for forgiveness for your sins and all that. It's more so please let there be a good harvest. Please help me to find my way this year. Stuff like that. Please help me to see the way and the wisdom. Something along those lines. You just guidance, knowledge, good harvest, maybe fertility, maybe you're trying to have a family, stuff like that. You just pray to the God you need to, for the thing you need, and for the right occasion. But yeah. Outside of prayer, some people will dabble with magic. With Norse heathenry, most magic practices will occur by making bind runes. Essentially, you take different rune symbols and connect them and stuff like that. Another thing that may happen is that they will inscribe on stones the usually Elder Futhark runes, and then some people like draw 3 every day to see what their fate is for that day, which gets into an interesting thing. One outlook difference with Norse heathenry is that unlike traditional ideas of luck and you make your own way, with the gods or whatever, there's kind of like this idea, because of the mythology of it all, that every single person, their fate has been kind of pre-written, and so you've kind of already been dealt a sort of certain set of stats, almost. Think of it kind of like a game, a certain set of stats. Some people are fated for not the best life, and some people are fated for a good life. But overall, even though sort of our fates are written for us, one thing is we try to, in our moment, sort of write our stories the way, ultimately it'll be the way it's written, but we live our day one day at a time and do our best and try to write our stories to become the people we want. That's kind of our outlook on things, or at least from my understanding, that's how at least I look at things, is you're writing your story one day at a time, but it's a story that's kind of been pre-written, and so you can either fulfill your potential to be some legendary thing or fail. And so it just kind of gives you this idea of try to always be the hero of your story, do the things you want to the best of your ability, and do the good things to the best of your ability, so that way you can be remembered as some sort of hero, or some sort of great, caricature that people enjoy being around. Nothing else much is really coming to mind. All I can possibly add is there is some people that kind of believe in the gods as physical beings, and there are some people that view them more as not literal, because that would have been the beings part, but some people think of them more as spirits or energies. It's far and few between. Everyone kind of does their own thing. I like to think of them more in a personage sense, but I do think that the spirit sort of energy route does have a lot of sense to it. There's a lot of things Smith mythologically that you can't always take 100% literally, I don't think. But there is a lot of good info with life. But yeah, we'll see you in the next one. If you liked it, subscribe, like, and all that. And yeah, hey though.